Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today's video is going to be my full review and thoughts on the new Morphe Jaclyn Hill The Vault collection. These are the new Volume 2 palettes that were sent out in PR as well. I've been trying them for the past week now. I have my first impressions video. I can leave it linked down below. And today I am going to be chatting about my thoughts on these palettes, if I think that they are worth it, which ones I recommend, if I recommend the collection, if I recommend the original Jaclyn Hill palette instead. We got a lot to talk about today, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Okay, so like I said, these are the new palettes that I have here, the Volume 2 palettes. I did also receive the original batch in PR as well. I can leave my first impressions as well as my review video listed down below if you want to check those out. The last video that I posted last week on this collection, I was talking about the comparisons between the two and if I thought that there was a comparison between the Volume 1 batches, the Volume 2 batches. I definitely do believe so. Even after I've been playing with them over the course of this week, I still believe that there are differences. I do go ahead and re-swatch all of these palettes in last week's video, and I also do some comparison swatches from the first batch to the second batch, and I also did comparison photos of my swatches that I did with these palettes versus the swatches that I did with these palettes. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I will definitely have it linked down below. I just didn't want to include all of that again since we've already gone over that. But I will say that there were definitely differences between the two palettes, which I think is good. One of the biggest things that I noticed, and I put this as a pinned comment after my video had already gone live, because I filmed that video I think like 4 or 5 days, I can't remember, before that video posted live because I was out of town all weekend. And so even after I played with the palettes, as I was getting ready to upload it, I'd played with them a little bit more off camera. So I made a pinned comment up there that one of the biggest things that I noticed of the differences between these two palettes was that in the first batch, it was almost like some of the matte shades, and especially like the deeper matte shades, it was almost like they were darker and pigmented, and even when I was swatching them or putting them on my eyes, they would come out with a lot of power right away, but they were fairly hard to blend, and I was having some difficulties there, difficulties making them look smooth. They looked a little bit more patchy. They kind of like seemed to like stick on the eyelids in certain spots, and I wasn't able to blend it. What I noticed with the second batch of these is that, and I feel like you can tell this in some of the swatch photos as well, and I will post, I did get quite a few requests to post the side-by-side swatch photos on my Instagram, and I will definitely be doing that as well. That is March Beauty Word. And so one thing that I noticed that I felt like you could tell in the swatches was that in the second batch, it's almost like the shadows don't have as much pigment, but they're so much smoother and they're easier to blend, and you just kind of have to take your time and build them up, especially the darker shades. So I mean, that's probably just gonna be a personal preference, which you prefer. I prefer it much more how it is now in this batch because I'm not a makeup artist. I don't have the greatest blending skills of all times, and so when something is coming out super powerful right away, it's like, yes, okay, great, it's pigmented, but then when I can't blend it, I'm like, oh no, what do I do now? So that's kind of difficult for me. So I like that I can kind of take my time, especially with the darker colors here, and like, yes, I can build them up, but they're just easier, they're smoother to blend out. So hopefully that makes sense. Kind of the biggest thing that I noticed between the two, but I don't want to spend too much time on comparisons between the old and the new. I know a lot of people are doing that with their videos, and that is fantastic, because I think there definitely was a question as, is it different? Are they the same? And they are different. So I kind of just want to go into my review of this product because this is actually what will be on the market and this is what you will be purchasing. But I did notice the differences, so I'm glad that better palettes are going to be coming out. So for the Vault collection, the new launch date is August 14th. You can buy the palettes for $15 individually, or if you want to buy all 4, you can buy them for $49. Now, right off the bat, what I will say is that I honestly don't think it's worth it to buy this entire set. Like, I wouldn't really be able to recommend buying the full set. Reason being is that I still have a lot of problems with dark magic, and when I was doing the first impressions video, I felt like I was struggling as well. I don't feel like I struggle as bad with this palette as I did with the first batch, but I still feel like I struggle with this palette. And I also feel like I'm struggling with the Bling Boss palette as well. So these two out of the 4, I still have a lot of problems with. So for that reason, I just don't feel like I would really be able to recommend purchasing all 4 for the $49. I definitely want to make sure I say this, but especially if you have the original Jaclyn Hill palette, I honestly think that you're probably good. Like if you want to get one like supplemental palette in here, like maybe there's a color scheme that's really calling to you and you don't mind spending the $15 and you get more of a theme and you have the mirror in there and it's more travel friendly, I would recommend that. But if you do have the original Jaclyn Hill palette, I honestly don't think that you need to go ahead and repurchase this full Vault collection. Hopefully that makes sense. This is still one of my favorite palettes. This palette is $38 and you get 35 shades. I still think that's a good deal for all the different shades you get in here, and I really, really enjoy this palette. I still continually reach for it, and it is truly one of my favorite palettes. But if you were thinking about getting all 4 of these because you want that big variety of shades in there, I seriously would still say to go with the Jaclyn Hill palette. So if you already have it, I suggest just hanging on to it. Or if you were trying to decide, you know, should I get the big Jaclyn Hill palette or should I get the breakdown of the 4 palettes, I would say go with the original Jaclyn Hill palette. So like I said, these were the 2 palettes that I was kind of having the most trouble with. And one thing that I want to say too, just like I mentioned before, that I'm not a makeup artist and I don't have like amazing blending skills. I don't feel like either of these 2 palettes are good if you are like me. If you are, you know, even like a very beginner with makeup. I'm not super beginner, I'm like more on the intermediate level, but even still, I have a lot of trouble with these 2 palettes in particular. So if you are looking for something more beginner friendly, I honestly think this is it too. I really don't have a lot of the issues that I do in this big palette. And again, some of these darker shades I can still struggle with. I just do kind of regardless with whatever palette I'm reaching in for. But a lot of this palette is colors that I feel like I can work with and that I feel like I can get use out of. And then I have some of those darker shades, you know, a few of them sprinkled in here and there that I can play with and work on and such. And especially with the Dark Magic palette, I mean, a lot of it is those deep dark shades. So if you are more beginner, intermediate skill level with your blending, with your makeup and such, I just think that you're gonna have a really hard time with this palette. I feel like I can create a look that will pass with this palette. It was harder for me to think that with the first one. I felt like I just didn't always look the greatest. I felt like I wanted to wipe my makeup off. I feel like when the looks that I've created with this, like I can still pull them off and I can make it work, but especially under the YouTube scrutiny, I don't think I feel that way. I just wanted to say that also, but especially just this lower row here, they're harder to work with. I do like Bust It more in this palette than I did in the original too, because again, I feel like you can tell in the swatch photo, it's a lot less pigmented, but a lot easier to blend, which is great. But honestly, again, just coming back and looking at the color scheme and the different shades in here, I really struggled with this palette. So this one is really tough for me to recommend. So that one is the Dark Magic. And then the other one, like I said, that I have some troubles with is the purple palette, which is so disappointing to me because this was one that I was seriously so excited for. I love purple makeup looks, and I was really pumped for this one. So this one is the Bling Boss palette. Now I do want to say that the shimmers in this one especially just are so nice. The shimmers amongst the entire Vault collection I thought were really good from the beginning. From the original batch, I thought they were good. I noticed that I would get a lot of fallout with them, which I wasn't appreciating, and the fallout is a lot less. But I will say that this palette still gives me the most amount of fallout, which is really different from the original Jaclyn Hill palette. I experienced almost like no fallout with that palette. So that's something that I noticed with this one. But the shimmers are really, really beautiful in here. It's still just some of these darker purples and the dark red that I have some, I can't quite get it to work how I really want it to, you know, which is such a bummer for me. But you know, if this is the palette that you've been looking for and those shimmers speak to you, or you're not afraid of those darker purples, I do still think that you could probably make it work. Just for me, I just struggle, and when I go into this palette, I really want to use all these different shades, and I want to use these matte purples, and I just find myself struggling to get them to look good on my eyes. Again, I like the shimmers out of here, but again, it's still harder for me to be able to recommend this one. And then if I'm only recommending 2 out of 4, that's why I say maybe grab 1 palette or grab 2 palettes, or go ahead and grab the original Morphe Jaclyn Hill, because if you are only buying 2 palettes, so that's already at $30, and then you could get more shades and more palettes for an extra $8, you know? So those are the 2 palettes that I really couldn't get my vibe on with. So I will say, moving on to the yellow palette, this is the Armed and Gorgeous palette. This palette did not work for me in the first batch, and I was so disappointed, but it just did not work for me. There was makeup looks that I was trying to use with this that I was having to wipe completely off. I will say I feel like there's a huge turnaround in this palette, especially from the original launch. I can even use this Top Secret, which was like unusable in the first batch. I can even make that one work. I was wearing this palette in my latest makeup haul video if you wanted to check that video out. And I also am planning on doing a Instagram tutorial with the purple palette. That should be up on my Instagram soon, just so you can kind of see a complete finished eye look, because I didn't do complete finished eye looks in my most recent first impressions. I kind of just tried some shades out. This one I really am liking. Again, the shimmers. The shimmers are so nice across all these palettes. They just truly are. But even some of these oranges, I was having a lot of issues with them. Again, just kind of being that like almost like overly saturated, I feel like I'm gonna say like subculture vibes from the first batch, where they really packed a lot of pigment, but I just could not get them to not look so patchy on my eyes. I'm having so much better luck with this palette. Even this dark brown here, I think that's a really nice one too. I had Smooth Criminal on my eyes the other day. Access is a really nice color too, and I love these gold shimmers. This dark shimmer is really pretty as well. So this palette I've gotten along a lot more with. Again, if these are your vibes, these are your tones, and you love the overall theme of this palette, I would be able to recommend this one. I have been liking it. And then for Ring the Alarm, this was the palette from the first launch that I got along the best with. I really didn't have a ton of issues with, and I feel pretty much the same way as I do now from the first launch. This one is what I have on my eyes today. I don't even know how many colors I used. I know I have Rush, Siren, On Camera, Lolly, a little bit of Framed. I used a bunch of shades out of this palette, because this was the last one that I wanted to test before doing this video. I wanted to get the video up before the release date, which meant I didn't have as much time to play with these as I did from the last time, but I really wanted to make sure I had played with the shades before I came on and reviewed them, because I do not review off first impressions. I never will do that. And this palette I think is really nice. You know, this one is more of like kind of your warm tones, so this might be the one where maybe a lot of people have similar shades like this to the palette. This one to me is the most similar to the Jaclyn Hill palette, but I did comparisons from the first round as well to the original Jaclyn Hill palette. The shades are different. I feel like once you start putting them on your eyes and blending, you can kind of get the same feeling from it, but again, I really don't have a lot of issues with this palette. I think it's really nice. The shimmers are beautiful. On Camera is a stunning gold. I really like the mattes. I'm actually way more impressed with Framed from this palette than I was with the first one, and I didn't mind the first one, but it's such a nice like rich purple. But again, I had no problems blending it out, as you would have seen in the first impressions video if you caught that one. So this one I really like, and this one to me is kind of, for me personally, is a good partner to the original Jaclyn Hill palette, because maybe I'm going away for like a night, but I want to do like my warm smoky eye or something like that. Instead of taking the whole Jaclyn Hill palette with me, I can just grab this little guy and throw it in my travel bag, but then I still have the big palette with me for any other looks that I want to do when I'm back at home, that sort of thing. So this one for sure. I mean, honestly, I really do like the yellow one too, though. These two are definitely my favorite. So again, I highly recommend that you keep in mind my skill level and all of that. I think if you are less daunted by darker shades, or you just have a better handle on makeup and blending and all of that, I still think that you could make these two palettes work. But for me, I've just struggled with them a lot. So for me personally, it's hard for me to recommend these. But the Armed and Gorgeous and Ring the Alarm, I would recommend these. So maybe you want to grab one and try it out. Maybe you do want to grab 2 palettes, etc. But again, like I said, I would still recommend the big Jaclyn Hill palette as well. I just think this one is so nice. Now, saying that too, one thing that I want to point out is that if you are just planning to buy one, these palettes are only $15. That is not expensive at all. Milani is coming out with more expensive palettes. So I think that's something that's kind of getting overlooked, especially with all the drama and having to delay the release and oh my god, like it's so crazy. These are $15 palettes and you do get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 shades in each of the palettes. So 10 shades, you have a nice mirror on these. These are more travel friendly. I like the packaging on them. I like all the thought that's gone into them, where each of the palettes have, you know, this one has like the yellow dots on it and it has in yellow on the side here the name of it. I think that is nice. So for $15, I don't think that you're being like gypped or like you're losing money or anything like that. I think $15 is a really, really solid price for these. So I think that's a good thing. But then when you think about if you're going to purchase all of them for $49, then we're talking more money. Obviously you're getting more shades, which is great. But then it's like, well, is it worth it just to save, you know, the $10 and go for the big palette? And again, that's what I would recommend. So I guess, so that is everything today for my full thoughts and review on the Morphe Jaclyn Hill The Vault collection. I hope that my thoughts helped you out and kind of like my experience and feedback with all the different 4 palettes. I feel like I was a little bit more of like a negative Nancy in this video, which kind of bums me out because I'm just someone who, like, I want to love everything, whether it be makeup, people, like just really anything in general. I want to love it. So I was just a little bummed that 2 of those palettes didn't work out the best for me. Again, I feel like there are people out there that are going to make it work a lot better than I am, but I just have to be able to give you my personal experience, and that is kind of what it came down to. I can totally also understand if, you know, part of the reason if you want to buy this full collection is to have these smaller palettes with the mirror and more travel friendly. I totally get that, and if that's something that you are really wanting, I still don't think that $49 is a bad price for the whole set compared to what you would get, but if it's something like you just want all these different colors, you don't mind having a larger palette and not having a mirror, I would still say, you know, save a little bit of money and go with this palette, because this one I still would recommend over the Vault collection. But if you want to pick up a palette or 2 and see how it goes, I don't think $15 is a bad price for the palettes in here. So hopefully that makes sense. You know, that's just my review. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of reviews out there. I know a lot of people got this in PR. I'm sure a bunch of people are going to be buying it and reviewing it as well. So check out your favorite reviewers and go from there. It's your money and you get to put it where you want. So those are just my thoughts on this collection. I truly hope that you guys found my review video helpful. I'll have my other videos about the Vault collection listed down below, of course, if you want to check those out. But other than that, that's going to do it for today's video. And if you guys did enjoy it, I hope that you'll give this one a thumbs up. I hope that you'll also consider subscribing before you go. I do post every single day except for Saturday, and I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's video.